Welcome to today's 3D print. I want to give some basic information to help people out with using their CR-10 printer to get the good prints. This information is also usable for almost any 3D printer. First is a basic understanding of how 3D printing works, about how this process works. Your printer uses filament. It's basically think of it as fishing line, but it's very thick and it's very stiff. Okay, so it does not, it twangs more like a spring, like something. It's a solid. It's not really flexible, but it can flex, of course. Now I'm going to supersize this to show you what I'm talking about. Think of your filament as this, okay, except all solid. Okay, so your filament is a round line of plastic. Now when you're printing on your printer, it is very important to remember that the printer is dumb, deaf, and blind. It cannot see, it cannot hear, it cannot feel. So imagine if you had to write out a letter on a piece of paper with a pen, and you could not see, touch, feel, or sense the paper in any way, shape, or form. So you can't see the paper, you can't see the pen, you can't feel the paper, you can't feel the pen, you can't feel when the pen touches the paper. Okay? But what you can do is follow extremely precise, accurate instructions to fractions of a millimeter. So if I, the programmer, know exactly where your pen is and exactly where the paper is, I can give you precise XYZ instructions to say, go here, move here, lift here, move there, lift here. And as long as this pen and this paper are exactly where they're supposed to be, I can say, move to 0, 0, 0, move right, move down, move right, and you will get a line on the piece of paper. Okay? But if I tell you to go to 0, 0, 0 and the bed is actually -1, you're going to be like this, and you're going to write in the air, and you'll never know it, because the 3D printer is completely blind, deaf, and dumb. It's extremely precise, it's extremely accurate, but it has no ability to sense. So it is your job to make sure that the pen, hot end nozzle, the bed that you're printing on, and the plastic coming through your extruder is all correct, because the printer can only follow the exact instructions you give it. That's where bed leveling comes in. That's where making sure your filament's loaded, make sure the slicer has the correct settings for that filament so that it gives the correct settings to the printer. That's where all of that comes from. And I broke it? No, it goes like that. Now, bed leveling. Bed leveling is not very hard. It's just tedious. People talk about using the paper and stuff like that, and I don't consider it very useful. It's too variable. It's good to get you close. Use the paper to get you close. But to really level the print bed, you need to actually print. Okay, so let me bring you closer. Now, I have these larger wheels installed. First of all, I noticed somebody, these can't be like this. They have to be out like that. Then your nozzle will stop running into them. Also, try not to print where these are. You notice how I have these two particular clips placed. That's because it's going to home right here. And then I have the G-code program to lift, come over, come back down, so it skips this, draws prime line, and it does the fast swipe to here, and then it goes out. That's why this clip is not in the middle, because otherwise the nozzle would hit it. Okay. Sometimes if I'm going to do an unusually large print, I'll have to move some of these or even remove some of them if the print is too large. For example, when I printed this for my house number, it sat very close to this edge. So I had to make sure that, it's hard to do this when I'm holding it and I have to look at it at the same time. So if it was too close to the edge, I had to make sure these clips weren't here, because otherwise it would bump into this when I tried to print it. The nozzle. Now, to level, just download something large, anything. Find any cylinder, a cup, a vase, something, anything. I don't care what it is. Just make sure it's big. Scale it up so that it's at least 200 millimeters across, and circular is best. What you want is a circle, big circle. Find a big button or circle, something, a cylinder, anything. And then what you want to do is you want to put a skirt around it. Put the skirt 10 millimeters away and tell it you want to print 3 outlines. And then when your printer starts to print, first thing you're going to do is turn this all the way down. You're going to come to this printer and crank it all the way down to 25%. So this nozzle is going to be going, and that's what you want. Okay? As it starts to print, you will adjust this wheel until that filament starts to stick. Don't worry about how well it sticks. Just get it to stick. Okay, remember, from left to right is going to tighten it, which is going to pull the bed away from the nozzle, and right to left, or counterclockwise, or clockwise, I'm sorry, that's clockwise, right to left, is going to move the bed up or closer to the nozzle. I visually balance my beds. What I do is I come down here like this to the bed, and I look. And I turn this until the nozzle touches the bed, and then I gently turn it back some. Can I get that right? Right there. I turn it back until I just see a tiny light gap in the nozzle, and I stop. Okay? Do the same thing to the other one. As it's printing this circle, you will adjust these knobs. You do it live. Be careful not to push on the bed or you're going to distort your results. But if you do end up touching it, just give your bed a tap like that. Make sure the springs are set so that you didn't push it down and get it stuck down. And as it goes around the second time, you fine-tune it again. As it goes around the third time, you fine-tune it again. If you like what you're seeing, let it then begin printing the object and see if it sticks perfectly on its own without you having to touch a thing. Okay? If it doesn't, cancel the print, scrape it off, restart the print at the slow speed, and continue tweaking. It shouldn't take you more than 2 or 3 tries to get a really, really nice bed level. Now let me explain some of that regarding bed level and filament laying down on the bed. Your filament is a round cylinder of plastic that's continuous. Okay? This. So think of this tape roll as a tiny little segment of this filament. Okay? We're going to use this as a visual representation. This is full, not hollow. Okay? Now, if you know anything about circles, you have something called a tangent. The nozzle is literally this with a 0.4 millimeter hole that the plastic comes out of. Okay? So this plastic is 1.75 millimeters, and it is squeezed through a hole 0.4 millimeters, and that is your extrusion, but it's the same shape. It's a continuous cylinder. Now, when 2 circles touch, you have what's called a tangent. It's a point contact. This is very bad. You don't want this because there's no contact. There's nothing for them to glue each other together with. Okay? So your layers aren't going to be round. Your layers are going to be flattened like this. Okay? This is what your layers look like. So that's why your extrusion is 0.4 millimeters, but your layer height is 0.2 millimeters. So you are taking a 0.4 millimeter cylinder and you are squishing it down until it is 0.2 millimeters. So now it's 0.4 millimeters wide and 0.2 millimeters flat. So you end up with a basically a rectangle with curved ends. Okay? So a rectangle with curved ends. This is what you want, because this gives you increased surface contact area with the bed and with the other layers of plastic. This is what gives you your adhesion. This is what allows your print to hold itself together. If you increased your layer height to 0.4 millimeters, if it stuck at all, you would end up with a tangent. You would end up with point contact between 2 circular shapes, which is a point contact. That's almost no contact at all. The only adhesion you have would be the slight droop of gravity pushing these 2 pieces together. You'd have no adhesion. You'd be able to pull the thing right apart like it was nothing. It'd zipper like a Ziploc bag. Now, attaching to the plastic attaches to itself significantly better than it attaches to the bed, because it's plastic. Hot plastic and hot plastic are going to stick very well unless it's really crap plastic. So when you stick to your bed, you actually need to squish even more. So instead of a 50%, you're going to do typically on a printer we do 0.8 or 80%. So you're going to take your normal 0.2 and you're going to compress that to 0.16 roughly is the ideal perfect. Okay. Now, depending on your plastic, you might need more squish or less squish. Okay. You're going to see that on your print when it puts down a bead of plastic. If it looks like fishing line, if it looks like string, then you're putting this down. You're too far away from the bed, so there's no contact. It's a point contact. It's a tangent. So that's why it doesn't form the shapes. That's why it drags the plastic around. That's why you're able to touch it and just move it. Okay? You should be able to take your fingernail and scrape that plastic and it shouldn't move. Okay? And that's what will happen if you give it enough squish, assuming it can stick to your print bed. Different print surfaces, different materials. That's more complicated for later. Okay? So the whole purpose of printing the large cylinder, okay, is to allow you to visually inspect. Take a flashlight and visually inspect it as it's printing. If it's not squishing it flat, it should look like somebody took glue, a drop of glue on the table, and then you took your finger and went smear and smeared the glue, which makes it wide and thin. Now, if it's so thin that it becomes transparent, well, that's too much squish. While it will stick if you do that, you might flare out the bottom of your print so it won't be dimensionally accurate. You might embed the plastic into your print bed, which could damage your print bed, make it hard to remove, or damage your part when you go to remove it. Also, if you are too close, you can stuff your nozzle. What is there has to be some gap there for the plastic to be able to ooze out. So if it's printing nothing, if you see a line but no plastic, like it's not extruding, you might even hear your stepper motor going da 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 da, because it's trying to turn but it can't because you've stuffed it. Okay, so you lower the bed, you tighten the spring to pull the bed a little further away, and then you'll probably see a little splooge of plastic come out from the built up pressure, but then you'll see it start extruding. So you just do that. Don't worry about the stepper. Just let it print the cylinder at the slow speed, and you keep adjusting these wheels until you get that nice flat layer of plastic. And when it prints the second layer of plastic, the second outline of the skirt, it should merge with the first outline and look like one. If you see, like on the bottom of your, though, I just watched somebody's video. Who was that? Shenanigans. I watched your video. If you see this, on the bottom of your print, if you noticed, you can see distinct layers. You can see distinct lines of plastic on the bottom of your print. It should look like a merged piece. Let me show you an example. Here we go. I don't know how well this is going to come out on the video, but we'll see what we can do. So if you can see here, see how there's too much of a gap here? Okay. Now this was actually a stuffing. The nozzle was too close, and so the little bit of plastic that had gotten out was being stretched, and it was being squeezed too hard. But now if you look here, see how it looks? This is a single layer print. This is one layer of plastic on the print bed. And if you look closely, you can see it looks like one piece of plastic. That's kind of what you want. Now if you look closely enough, you can actually see that they are individual lines of plastic, but they're melded together. It's one solid continuous piece. Another example is this one. This is after I've properly adjusted it. Now if you look closely, you can actually see the individual lines, but it's one piece. It's merged together. That's what you want. You notice it's not too thin, it's not transparent and see-through, but it's flattened, it's smooth. If you squeeze too hard, what could happen is as the nozzle is moving along, it could actually splooge up the plastic in front of it because it's squishing too tight to the bed. And so the little bit of plastic that splooges forward of the nozzles, now it's acting like a shovel, like a snowplow, and it's pushing into the plastic. You'll get that when you, if you touch it while it's printing, you'll feel it. It's rough. Okay, that means you're too close. Okay, if it's smooth but coarse, that means you're too far. Okay, but if it's got like ridges where it's actually shoveling the plastic up, you're too close. Move it away just a tiny bit. It'll probably be sticking at that point, so you'll get a successful print. But each time you print it, if you notice it's shoveling a little bit, then just take. I sometimes adjust this by literally putting my finger on it and just moving it, 1 or 2 degrees of arc, just a teeny bit, just tweak, just a little bit, and after a while you'll get a perfect level and you'll never have to touch it again. Okay, or if it does move a little bit, it'll be a tiny tweak, but it won't fail the print. Okay, but what you want is you should almost not be able to tell the difference between your top layer and your bottom layer. And that came off of this printer. Okay, so it's capable of doing it. Now, some other things you need to do when working with the printer. Okay, if you're sagging in the middle, okay, the first thing you need to do is to see if your glass has a flat side. Okay, so get something long and straight like a square, level, a metal ruler, something that's perfectly straight. Lay it on there. If it's sagging and it's flexible, there's an easy fix. For example, I'm not using glass. I'm using a Print and Z skin, but it's not attached. It's separate. You can see here, it's not glued down. Okay, it was just a lot cheaper than the one that is glued down. Anyway, I had a little sink in the middle, where the middle of my bed, because of how large this print bed is, the middle of my bed sat a little bit lower. Well, very easy solution. I took 2 pieces of tape, about this big each, and I put them in the middle. I had 3, and that was too much. I ended up with the center higher than the rest. So I peeled one off, and I had 2 pieces of tape in the center, and that just keeps the center from sinking down. Okay, you're compensating for the little dip because of how large this PCB is. Eventually, if I can, like I'm thinking about converting this to a dual arm, like the S4, and I might put a adjustment thing in the middle, just another knob to help me center that, but I don't think I need it. I'm getting absolutely perfect prints without question. They're coming out amazing. This printer is nothing short of amazing. It's mind-blowing. So, that takes care of your bow, okay? And you'll see that when you start printing, you'll notice, and then the next thing you do is print an oval. Print something like this, you know, oval shape, something like this. Print something shaped like this, by the way. See that? Perfect. That off this printer. Okay, this thing is as big as the entire print bed. But print something smaller but oval shaped, and have it go from corner to corner, and that'll tell you if you have a sinking middle or not, because it'll be like it'll be perfect out here because you did your circle and level. Okay, so it'll be perfect out here, but then when it gets to the middle, it'll either squish down too much because the middle's too high, or you'll start to lose that nice squish and maybe even get stringing because the middle's too low. Well, prop it up. Just put one piece of masking tape underneath. Make sure it's flat. Make sure there's no wrinkles in it. On the aluminum bed, underneath the glass. Okay? Put the glass back on. See if that fixes it. If it needs a little more, add one more piece. Also, people have said that you can go to IKEA and get those 12 by 12 mirror panels, and apparently they're perfectly flat. So go get that. Okay? If you have a sinking middle, I'd still put a little piece of tape under there because that might bow over time. I don't know if glass can do that or not. I mean, some of these have come warped, so maybe they can. Either way, easy fix. Little piece of tape in the middle, problem solved. Now, a couple other things with the CR-10. You need to make sure it's tight. Okay, so the first thing you do when you have this thing assembled is grab the bed and try to bounce it up and down. Okay, the bed should not rock. If it rocks, either this way, like this, or like this, then one of your wheels underneath here is loose. Okay? Tip the printer on its side. Don't worry, you won't hurt it as long as you're gentle with it. You can manhandle this and pick it up and move it around. Just be gentle. You know, it is a precision machine. Tip it up, and 3 of these wheels underneath are concentric nuts. What that means is, quite literally, this. Okay? This is an extreme example. So if I had this as a nut, this is one position, and if I turn this nut, it's going to push my hand out. If I turn it this way, it's going to let my hand come back. So I can use that to adjust the tightness of those wheels. Don't make it too tight. You want it just tight enough that there's no play. So tweak, wiggle, tweak, wiggle. When the wiggle goes away, when you grab this and it does not jiggle when you move it, and it does not jiggle when you move it this way, stop. You don't need to tighten it anymore. You're done. Okay? Also check this. Okay? This has the same arrangement. 2 wheels here, 1 wheel on the bottom. Just not while it's printing. Just grab this and try wiggling it. If that wiggles, one of these concentric nuts is loose. Tighten it up. Not too tight again, because again, too tight, and it's going to resist moving back and forth, and that's going to affect your print quality. Okay? Also, check this. Okay? Grab this, and just very gently try to wiggle it. Does it wiggle? No? Okay. How about trying to turn one of these wheels? Just put your finger on the wheel, and just try to spin it. If none of the wheels turn, like see on mine, my bottom wheel is a little loose. Okay, so I need to tighten that up a little bit. I can spin this bottom wheel freely. It's spinning right now. Okay, that means it's not touching, and you want a 3-point contact. That might actually explain the little bit of imperfections I got in some of my tall, skinny prints. See those little imperfections there? And you can also see it in this, although this is partially because I cranked up the speed, and this was super tall and skinny, so the only thing holding this to the bed was this base right here. That was all that was holding it to the bed. So as it goes up, this is going to tend to want to do this when the printer's pushing on it. But if this is not sitting properly, if one of these wheels is not tight, that might actually allow this arm to pivot a little bit as it's moving back and forth, which would cause it to push into the layer that's already there, which would make the model do this, which would explain why I have some of these Z-banding issues on this model. Okay, the high speed plus that wheel coming loose probably did that. That's a regular maintenance item, so every couple 100 hours printing, or once a week, check. Make sure your wheels are all tight, make sure nothing's spinning freely. Just put your finger on it, make sure they don't turn. This one turns, I need to tighten it. Same thing at the bottom, just check it, make sure it's all good. That makes sure your printer's tight. Okay, make sure these screws are tight. Make sure these screws are tight. Maybe once a month, go in your Allen key. Don't crank it. You're going to break something. Just put it in there and just push. If it doesn't move, you're good. Okay? If you grab this tower, not while it's printing, and give it a little shove, nothing should move. This is a very, very solid printer. Next thing, make sure there's no crap on your nozzle. Look underneath. Your nozzle should be clean. Don't get rough with it because there's a insulation material around your hot end that you need, the heat block. And you don't want to lose that insulation because then you won't be able to maintain proper temperature, and you might lose your temperature delta between your heat break and your hot end, and then you'll start getting jams. You don't want that. So be careful, but make sure there's no plastic on there. Get yourself even the little snips the printer comes with will do fine. Just lift it up. Use your little snips and, just pull off the plastic. Make sure there's no plastic on the nozzle. Okay? Something else I like to do to keep handy is, your spatula. When it's doing the prime, if I notice something on the nozzle, I'll just stick this in here and I'll just pinch that little piece of plastic behind it. And then when the nozzle continues to move, the plastic will separate and it won't be dragging that piece of plastic around on the nozzle. Usually it'll let go at some point, but it might let go in your print and it's going to mess your quality up. Why would you want to do that? Don't go too fast. This is not a speed demon. If you try to crank up the speed, you're going to lose print resolution. You're going to lose quality because you're going to introduce vibrations. A machine like this, you can crank the speed up. It's got, it's super rigid. I got bracing everywhere. I mean, I can crank that thing up to, 60, 70, 80 millimeters a second. It don't care. That's not what it's for. Okay, it's a beginner's budget printer, and it's designed to print very large things. As long as you're nice to it and gentle with it, you will get beautiful large things like this that have absolutely no imperfections anywhere on the model. This took, I think it was 9 hours, and that's a single wall. It's a vase print. It took 9 hours, which really isn't bad when you think about it. No, don't worry about going faster. Worry about going faster later when you have more money to buy a better printer, or just buy two. And then you can have 2 prints going. But what else? I'm going to make a whole separate video for slicer settings. That's it. The printer comes correctly configured. Make sure your filament's clean. Measure your filament. Take a pair of calipers. Get a pair of calipers. They're $10 on Amazon. Take a pair of calipers. Measure the filament. Get a digital one. This way you don't have to learn how to read a caliper. Measure it. Make sure it actually is 1.75 millimeters. And then in your slicer software, tell it this is 1.75. If it's off by 0.1, it doesn't, 0.01, it doesn't matter. So if it's 1.73 and you put in 1.75, it's really not going to make much of a difference. But if it's off by a lot, you need to tell the slicer, because that will determine how much plastic it moves through the extruder to get the correct amount of plastic on this end. Because remember, it's not 1-to-1. You're forcing a 1.75 millimeter strand of filament through a 0.4 millimeter hole. So what's that? 12, 16. What is that? 4.5 to 1? That's a 4.5 to 1 ratio, and or something like that, close to that. Do the math. 1.75 divided by 0.4. So that's the difference between how much of this gets pushed through and how much comes out of here. So if you push 1 millimeter of filament out of here, you're going to get like 4.5 millimeters of filament out of here. Okay, that's why the stepper motors have to be so precise. Okay, if you're getting stringing, just crank up the retraction. As long as you're not using an all metal hot end, I run between 7 and 8 millimeters retraction. I have no stringing. I didn't touch this. This is as it came off the printer. I have a little problem with cooling on the other side here, overhang cooling, you can see there, but no string. I had a little bit of angel hair, you know, the wisps. You're not even going to see it on the camera. Little wisps of plastic that you just wipe off, but no string at all. I mean, prints like this, no stringing. All right, that's just retraction. Just crank your retraction up till it stops. People are having good success between 5 and 8 millimeters. It'll also change depending on what plastic you're using. If you want a very reliable plastic to get started with to tune your printer that won't give you particular plastic problems, get Esun PLA Pro. It's very strong and it lays like butter. So it'll remove the filament as being an issue. Like I wouldn't try this with the filament that the printer came with. It's crap. The cat printed nice, but anything else I tried to print is like, yeah, I didn't like it. So get some Esun PLA Pro. It's like $20, $25 on Amazon for a kilogram of it. And I just got some new. I want to try their blue. It looks really pretty. I'm going to print the Sorceress from Luby with this stuff. And, but yeah, put some good quality filament in there. Load it up. All you do is you squeeze, feed the filament through until it gets down to here. You can keep pushing if you want to make it extrude. You don't have to. It'll eventually do that. That's what the skirts are for. The skirts are to allow the nozzle to prime, to get rid of the cooked plastic that's in the end of the nozzle. Because, like for example, when this is done printing, that little bit of plastic is going to sit in the end of that nozzle and cook. Okay, and some plastic doesn't like cooking like that. You also, it's also going to ooze, so it won't feed properly the next time it tells it to go. So that's why, you know, I have a prime line, and that's why I print a skirt, because that skirt gets all the crap out, gets all the ooze out. If you tend to have a dusty environment or you keep filament around open for a long time, print out a dust filter. Don't use oil, you don't need it. If I have a lubricity problem with the filter, I might dip my finger in some oil and put it on a little bit of the filament just to help lube and season the nozzle a little bit, but I don't feed oil on it. As far as I can tell, that just interferes with the ability of plastic to stick to each other, because now you have oil between the plastic, so it's not going to stick as well. So don't mess with that. But print out the filter, put the sponge in there, and just clamp it onto your filament right here. And when it hits your extruder block, it'll just sit there, and the filament will run through the sponge material inside your filter. And so if there's any dust or anything collecting on a printer, like for example, I had a problem with this when I restarted it. Oh, all kinds of issues. A couple of times it jammed. Turned out because this had been sitting on top of the printer for the last 8 months, it had collected dirt and dust. And I was actually seeing that dirt and dust as black streaks in the print. Actually, I can show you. I have one. This is not dirt and dust. This is old filament that came out, but you can see. Okay. See the black streaks there? Okay. That's crap that came out of the filament onto the print. You can see how it's darker right there. That's a little bit of leftover of, I believe that's a little bit of leftover of this filament that was still somewhere on the nozzle and it finally came out. That can sometimes wreck a print. They actually do make cleaning filament you can feed through there. It helps, theoretically it helps grab whatever crap you have in there and stops it from mixing. Especially if you're changing types of filament. For example, if you're going between PETG or PLA. But what I do is I just feed a bunch of filament. I feed a whole bunch of filament until it comes out clean. You're talking about a couple pennies worth of filament. Just feed it until it comes out clean, then do your print. What else? Get more of these binder clips if you're going to use a flexible print surface like I'm using, and just put more binder clips on. Just again, remember, make sure the clip isn't like that, because then your printer's going to run into it. So flip the clip outward so that the clip is out. The ones on the side, you'll have to remove one of the arms, because if you have the arm out, it's going to hit the gantry, and you can't have the arm in. So just remove one. They pop right off. You just give the clip a squeeze, and the little arm pops off. Okay. The front and back ones don't have any interference, so you can leave them on there. They won't bother anything. but the side ones, if you decide you need them, you'll have to remove one half of the clip. What else? I can't think of anything else offhand. A good suggestion is to turn your filament, flip your arm around so that the arm is tilting away from the printer instead of toward the printer. Okay, and then flip the spool around so it's still on this side. This gives you a larger gap between your roll and the extruder, which is what you want. And you also want to make sure you align this so that this is straight into the extruder. So here's your extruder, here's your spool. You want them lined up. You don't want it like this, because then your plastic has to turn an angle. Turn one way and it could skip over and wrap around the spool. Turn the other way and it could touch your Z-rod, maybe get grease on it. Who knows? It just, the less resistance you have, the less problems you'll have. So roughly line them up like that, tilt it away. That'll also take care of the extreme angle difference. I always have the filament coming over the top because it's low enough that it's not too much of an angle when the printer's all the way down here, and it relieves the stress when it has to print up here. So when the plastic has to come up this way to go into the extruder, you don't have a problem then. Okay. What else? Print the new deflector. That's this little plastic thing right here. It's just an upgraded fan shroud thingy. That orange thing right on the bottom of my hot end there. It's the same exact thing that came with the factory, except the angle of the deflector is corrected so that the air actually, instead of blowing the air into the hot end, it's blowing the air at the interface between the nozzle and the print, which is what you want. You want to cool the print if you're printing PLA. That'll be off if you're printing ABS or ASA or something like that, so you don't have to worry about that. A couple other upgrades I suggest is an SD card converter. Okay, I'm going to put one internal, but basically that's a short one, and that's what you're going to want if you're not going to take your printer apart. But it basically converts from micro SD to full-size SD, which is significantly easier to deal with. This is a short little one. I can't take it off while it's running here, but it's just a short little ribbon cable right here, and then this little module just sits on top of here. And now I don't have to insert and remove an SD card constantly because these are known to break. Okay, so now I can just leave that alone. For people who don't want to tear the printer apart, maybe you can even print a little 3D printed enclosure to wrap around this edge so that you don't bump into that ribbon cable and damage the ribbon cable or the socket. And this way you can just glue it down, double stick tape it down, and then you don't have to worry about it. But now you have a full-size SD card to remove and print on the printer. It's just much easier way to interface with the printer. What else? As far as 3D printed upgrades for the printer, I don't see any reason to print tensioners. This has a built-in tensioner, and once it's set, you don't really have to mess with it. If the belt gets a little loose, you just loosen these nuts, pull it out, and you tighten it up again. So I don't see any reason to mess with that. I prefer the nice sheet metal this is made out of versus the plastic of a printed part. Do print out these knobs. They make leveling so much easier. Oh my god, it's a dream. These are the ultimate leveling knob, CR-10 ultimate leveling knob. Looks like a big wagon wheel. They're amazing. Also print the relief for the strain relief for the heat bed cable. I haven't had a problem with it, but if you wait until you have a problem, why bother? Fix it before you have a problem. I do need to print a new spool holder because I have a couple of spools. For example, my Repcord PLA does not fit. The hole is smaller, so it does not fit on the spool holder. So I need to print a new one that's thinner, or have just a second one here for that. I have an old spool holder from one of the wine houses, so I think I'm just going to make a new thing for this, or just break this off and put a rod in here so that I have a thin one when I have these weird rolls that don't have normal sized spool holes. I replaced all the fans in the printer, so you can hear the printer is now silent. The only thing you can hear is the stepper motors. Another worthwhile print, it's mostly decorative, but I really like it, is this little cover for the extruder, the feeder. It has a an insert here for your cable to make it sit put so it doesn't go all over the place, and your filament goes in here. This just pops right on, and then you stick your cable there, and that's for your cable management. And now it looks nice. Dust, dirt can't get in there, debris can't get in there. I also did print, and I will be installing this modification for the feeder. This allows you to put a PTFE tube in here, a la the way the Flexion extruder works, so that the plastic has nowhere to go except where it needs to go. It cannot deviate and wrap around the extruder gear. That will come in handy for printing flexibles, because I do want to print TPU. I want to try making a pair of shoes. I don't know why, I just always wanted to make a pair of shoes. I did print the Fang Mod, but I don't think I'm going to install it. First of all, I think the stock fan doesn't push enough air to properly feed through this. I think it's going to be of limited effect. I think this would have been better if it had a 30mm fan mount here and here, and you put 2 fans on, 1 for each fang. I think that would have been more effective. I think they actually do make one that does exactly that, but I really love the clean lines of this printhead, and I don't want to disturb those clean lines. So what I think I'm going to do is I'm going to get a second one of these pancake fans, the squirrel cage fans that are on here already, and simply put it over here. You know, a little spacer so I don't block these vents, but take a second one of these fans, put it over here with another deflector on the bottom, and then I'll have double the airflow from both sides to handle my cooling. I think that'll be perfectly fine. It's 99% fine the way it is. And that will also retain that really nice clean lines of this printer, because it is one of the nicest looking printers I've ever seen. It's clean. It just looks nice. It doesn't look kludged. Don't worry about PLA in your heat bed, because none of the plastic parts you print are going to touch the heat bed. So they will never get hot enough for that to be a problem. This has no problem getting to 90 degrees. I tried it yesterday just for the hell of it when I was testing out the fan, and it reached 90 degrees just fine. It was a little slow getting from 85 to 90, but it got to 85 in like 10 minutes, and then another 6 or 7 minutes to get the rest of the way to 92 degrees. So less than 20 minutes it was there. I'll have to actually time it. I'll report back on that when I do. I have some ASA coming in, so I'll actually have a need to run that high a temperature, and we'll see how it works. I cannot think of anything else. I need more clips. I love orange, so I got orange clips. They're like $6 for 25 on Amazon, or you can get a couple at the dollar store. I can't think of anything else. That's it. Once again, to level the bed, print something big with a skirt, with at least a 3-layer skirt. The moment the head starts to print when heating is finished, just turn the nozzle until the FR on the screen says like 25%. Just crank it all the way down, 25 to 40%. You want this nozzle to crawl. You want it to be like, it'd take forever to make a circle. But the point is, that gives you time to adjust this wheel until the plastic comes out correctly. And then when as it moves along, you'll see, okay, it's either getting too close or too far, and you adjust this wheel. And then you adjust that wheel. Then you adjust that wheel. Then when it goes around again, repeat. Adjust, 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 adjust. If the old plastic gets in the way, hit stop, tear the old plastic off, restart it again, and do it again. As it goes around, adjust, adjust, adjust. Once you get it good enough to start printing, you're not done. Just make tweak adjustments as you make each print. When you start making a new print, if you notice your center's a little too high off the bed, okay, lower the bed a little bit. It's okay if this is a slightly higher than absolutely perfect, as long as it's sticking correctly. And eventually you'll find that perfect medium where no matter where you print, this printer is now at the point where I can print unattended. As long as this filament is loaded and no one has whacked this thing, I can simply hit print and walk away and know for an absolute fact that plastic will stick when it goes to print, and it won't be a problem. I would move away from painter's tape. It's a pain in the ass. I would either use hairspray on glass, something like 3D lac, or Print and Z or PEI. They're not messy. I don't want to be spraying hairspray. I don't want to be smearing glue. I just want it to work, and so far this works. I've got about 400 hours on this, no problem. It's still sticking perfectly. You can't pull a part off of it. I mean, I printed this like this. Okay? I printed like that, so the only contact with the print bed was this. Okay? I printed this like that, and it printed fine. It stuck fine. I printed this rocket. This 390 millimeter tall rocket. Okay? And the only contact, the surface area, was that. That was the only contact with the print bed. It printed fine. All right? Once you get your bed level right, and once you get that nice smooth first layer, and it even feels smooth to the hand when you put your fingers on it. It should feel like a solid piece of plastic. This is the bottom. Okay, if you're not getting that smooth finish, then your bed level's not right. Tweak it until it is. Okay, make sure you use a good plastic to do this. I've had some plastics where there's nothing you can do; it won't stick. I got that who makes it? Hobby King PLA. Oh God, impossible to make that stuff stick. It curls up on itself no matter how much you squish it, no matter how far away it is. Maybe this Print and Z will work with it. I don't know, but I gave up on that plastic. As soon as I switched to a different filament, no problem. Okay. If you want some super cheap filament to dick around with, Repcord. Their filament is very brittle. It's not strong. Okay, so structural parts might break. Okay, but decorative parts, you know, things that have shape and structure to them, you know, like this kind of stuff, it'll print fine. But if you're printing thin wall stuff like I like to print, you know, single wall stuff, don't use the Repcord. It's too brittle. Okay, but it has the advantage of being pretty cheap, and it prints like cream cheese butter. It goes down so smooth, and it is so tolerant to slight inconsistencies that you will love this filament just for that, just for ease of printing. PLA Pro, the Esun PLA Pro, is also like that. It prints like butter. It's like cream cheese coming out of the nozzle. It spreads perfectly, like that perfect temperature cream cheese of butter, and you spread it with a knife, and it's just like whoosh, and it's like perfect. And you're like, wow, that's the way this stuff prints. So I would advise starting with something like that, just because of how easy it is to print. And then once you know your configuration is correct, then you can begin to mess with other filaments, and you'll know that, okay, that's not the problem. I need to find out what the problem is elsewhere. Sorry for the long video. I want to try to answer as many of the questions as I could regarding how to set up your printer the first time. So again, make sure everything's tight. Make sure all the wheels are tight. Make sure nothing jiggles and moves. Make sure your bed level is correct. Check for your center dip if it is. Add a little tape to boost it up if you need to. Get a piece of the mirror glass from IKEA that people are suggesting. I might grab one just for the hell of it, but I love this Print and Z. Print out the replacement wheels. They actually slip right over top of the existing wheels. So you unscrew the existing wheel, push it into the new one, and then put it back on. It just gives you more leverage. It makes it easier to grab and turn. Print your strain relief. You don't have to buy anything, just print them, install them, and then download a cylinder. Matter of fact, I think I'm going to put up a print, or so I'm going to try to make a print specifically for this big giant cylinder, and then do that to get your bed level. Then print your oval, you know, your oval shape to check as it goes from corner to middle to corner, and again tweak your bed level as you go. And once you get it to stick right, you're gonna slap yourself in the face and go, why was I fighting with this damn printer so much? It's amazing. And that applies to any printer. Any printer that has adjustment knobs, exact same procedure. You do the exact same thing. My Wanhao, the duplicator, the all of them, whatever printer you have. If you have adjustment knobs for the bed, it's the same exact process. Put a big print on it, slow it the heck down so it's crawling across the bed, and tweak the knobs until the plastic looks right. And remember, you want a squished profile. I already lost the roll of tape. There it is. If the plastic comes out flat, that's bad. If the plastic comes out round, that's bad. You want the plastic to come out squished. Okay? Not squished enough to be transparent, but squished enough to look like it wants to go transparent, but it's not. But flat. And flat enough that when the next layer prints next to it, they merge together as one solid layer. But not so merged that they actually start pushing up and snow plowing. You'll see it as it's happening, nice and slow. You'll actually see it doing it, and if it's snow plowing, you're too close. If there's a gap in between your lines, Okay, assuming your plastic is measured correctly, assuming there's nothing else wrong, then you're too far away. Adjust until that problem goes away. And once you have it all adjusted, you're going to go, wow, that's easy. Bed level's not hard. And for a printer rigid like this one is, this one was not rigid. The bed kept warping. Once I replaced that bed with a thicker plate, it stopped warping. This does not have that problem. The Y carriage plate is very thick and sturdy. So once you get this level, you'll never have to re-level it again for the most part. You just won't. There's no reason for a bed level to change. One thing to be careful with. Notice how I have two printers here? Well, I kept wondering why I randomly had problems with my nozzle being totally in the wrong spot. And that's because I would have something on top of here, and this arm would come down to a point lower than this object and be pushed up because this is jammed underneath it. Okay, so make sure there's nothing around the printer. Also over here where your box is, make sure this frame here is not going to hit nothing when it comes down. Okay, because that'll prevent your bed from coming down and hitting your end stop switch. Okay, and because it's cantilever, there's none over here, so it hasn't. Remember, blind, dumb, and deaf. This printer has no way of knowing that it's tilted. Okay, I could grab this arm, lift this up, tilting this whole entire thing, and it'll just merrily keep on printing as if there's nothing wrong, and you'll have a big spaghetti mess. Okay, blind, dumb, and deaf. So it's your job to make sure the environment is what the printer expects, and then it will print for you perfect every time.